right now they look for that little like validation, but then afterwards they just do it on their own and then they lie about it. So good luck with that. I'll also tell you this. I was the head of the finance division at a previous company, and sales commission is calculated by the accounting and finance department. And there's usually somebody in the team who gets passed on this role. So it's very important whenever you work at a new company or at your current organization, I strongly encourage you to really understand how they're calculating it, because usually they're fucking it up, and it's not fair to you guys. So unless you're using some automated service or something, but if it's like a formula or accounting tool in Excel, again, it's formulas and there's a lot of human error. So that's just like a little insight. Now we're on to, sorry, one second. Okay, so Rob Curtus is our next speaker. He's talking about hacking sales, and he's just gonna take it from here.
Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. My talk, as you can see here, is 4 practical sales tips that I really wanted you all to go home with and deploy tomorrow, today, this afternoon. I figured there was going to be a lot of lecture style or methodology, so hopefully this is going to be a real takeaway for you all. And I'm a big lover of gifts, so there's going to be loads in the presentation just to keep you all awake. A little bit on me. I moved to Israel nearly 8 years ago. I've sold people, I've sold property, I've sold products. I was in recruitment. Just to clarify, it wasn't people trafficking. And I was part of the founding team and VP sales at Graduate. I believe they're one of the sponsors here today. I left Graduate about 9 months ago after they were acquired. Amazing journey. Can talk about it afterwards. Really an enjoyable 7 years. Today, I'm the Vice President of Sales at Kula. Kula is an agency and reseller of a Facebook product called Workplace, which is a sort of version of Slack, but it's an internal enterprise network. And as I said before, I want these to be real takeaways that you can deploy in your world this afternoon, this evening, when you're on the phone to the States, or in your workflow as you go forward. So some key takeaways that hopefully I'm going to deliver on. So tip number 1. This is something I learned from somebody a long time ago in my real estate days in London. He was the CEO of a chain called Latasca, which had about 300 stores in the UK. And he was a really impressive entrepreneur who'd done it multiple times with different restaurant chains. And his key line in all of his business world was think big, but act small. What did he mean by this? He was running 300 stores, a big enterprise-style restaurant chain. But to him, how the tapas food was delivered to the customer, absolutely critical. He was always thinking big, where's the chain going? What's the exit plan? How many stores I can acquire this year? But the detail really mattered. So think big, act small. How do I apply this in a sales arena? For me, it's about selling the next step in the sale. Brittany? What do I mean by this in application to the think big, act small methodology? As a salesperson, maybe the first impulse is, how am I going to get the contract signed? That's the think big, or how am I going to hit the target? But actually, this is something I learned just on the ground. The key to selling was selling the next step to the client, not selling getting the signature happening. That was the goal. But actually, what's the next step? Well, let me sell in the next call. Let's bring your stakeholders to the next call. The next step might be a range of other things that apply to how you do sales today. But if you sell the next step and make it smaller, you're leading the client towards the end goal. So that's tip number one. Tip number two. Don't ask, what budget do you have? And again, I wrote these in the presentation as really a reminder to myself of things that maybe I did in the past or sometimes fall into bad habits and still do. It's as much as a lesson to me as it is to you. I hate this question because you might not like the answer, first of all. And you might not like the answer because they say something like, well, we haven't really thought about that yet, or I don't have any budget for what you're telling me. And you don't really want them to say that at this stage. And often we ask that question sometimes way too early. We've been hearing that from some of the incredible speakers from this morning. You've got to sell the value first, like we learned earlier, and like you're probably all doing great stuff on, but negotiate afterwards. Because your job as a salesperson within the organization is to maximize the dollars on each and every opportunity that you're working on. Okay. Number 3. We don't give discounts. This is something that comes up often in a sale. I need a discount. What will you do this for? What's the best price that you're going to give this to me? And whilst we all do accept, everybody in this room, that we do give a discount, the way that we bill that within the conversation with the client has to be framed in a completely different way. This is something that I learned through some incredible training with a company called Scottwork, who are negotiation training specialists. They work with some of the biggest companies in the world. I recommend their course, whether you do it as a company or individually. The framing of the response to, will you give me a discount, needs to be different. We might naturally try and say, we will give you a discount if you do X, Y, and Z. This is wrong. It's the wrong phraseology and the wrong psychology. Because your prospect is thinking, he said, we will give you a discount. He didn't hear what happened after you said that. The phraseology needs to be the other way round. So the way that I phrase it is, in response to that question of, will you give me a discount? If you're willing to do, as in the client, if you're willing to be a reference customer, if you're willing to introduce me to 2 or 3 other potential clients, if you're willing to speak at our user conference, if you're willing to be a case study, then I am happy to provide the product at this level, never using the word discount. Works with children, by the way. It's great. Flips the psychology. If you're willing to do this, then I'm willing to do that. Tip number 4, our final tip. These are the 5 W's. And I use this in the way that I approach a sale, maybe not always overtly, maybe not ever expressing it in this direct way to the client, but I always want to know at specific stages of the sale the answer to these questions, because they help you qualify the whole time through the sales process. Qualification doesn't stop with SDR. Qualification continues the whole way to the end, because you're qualifying when they're going to sign, you're qualifying when they're going to want to launch. All sorts of other types of qualification take place the whole time. So being able to answer, and I used to do this with my team, on specific opportunities, drilling down, I want to know the answer to these questions. Who's going to make the decision? What's the process to get to that decision? Who's paying for it? Why do they need the product? What's the pain or the requirement for the purchase? And when will a decision be made? And that is a really important question, that last one. We were talking earlier with some of the people in the room, and someone said, it's important to lose quickly. Because often, we don't know the answer to that question. And so we're managing these inflated pipelines that actually are not real. So lose quickly, or as I used to call it, kill or cure your leads. One way or the other. They'll come back later. If it's right, it'll come back. Nurture it. There are loads more that we could have gone into. So time is limited, and I know we've all probably got other things to do. But these are some of the other things that popped into my mind in terms of tips. Do a proper discovery process at the beginning and throughout the sale. Know your client. Understand their world. Mirror their behavior. Almost be an extension of them. You're not selling to them. You're putting your arm around them and saying, look at that. I think Dana said this earlier. Listen more than you speak. That listening process is so important, particularly early on, because you're grabbing intelligence, ammunition, knowledge that you can use to refer back. When you repeat what they've said to you, very powerful. Which really is the same as knowing your customer. Understanding their motivation, their world, their problems. Within Graduate, we really got to understand the psychology of who an alumni director was, their role within the institution, and how to play to their ego. Nobody really knew them. They were in a room that was somewhere on campus, and they were forgotten about. We made them feel incredible, and we understood their pain. We were almost like therapists. And lastly, and I learned this from a really great sales leader who's not here today, but always be paranoid in a deal. And what I mean by that is always be paranoid that you're not going to close it or what's stopping it closing. We always know the upside. Yay, we've won the deal. But I'm always concerned, what's the downside? Where are we not fulfilling the process with each specific lead? And address that all the way through the sales journey. Finally, if all else fails, then there is the old whiskey's good. There is the old sales model. I don't know how many of you have watched Glenn Ross, brilliant sales movie, years old. But here we go. He says,
"Put that coffee down." Coffee's for closers only. You think I'm fucking with you? I am not fucking with you. I'm here from downtown. I'm here from Mitch and Murray. And I'm here on a mission of mercy. Your name's Levine? Yeah. You call yourself a salesman, you son of a bitch? I don't gotta listen to this shit. You certainly don't, pal. Because the good news is you're fired.
thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Rob. Rob, you are officially